my COO, Richard, coined a phrase, death by Chrome tab, because what ends up happening, you've got 10 different apps opened on your computer. You've got your PMS, you've got your pricing software, you've got an operational field software, you've got some kind of CRM. I mean, you've got 10 systems that don't always talk to each other very well. You're shuttling data in between them, and it doesn't work. It's not scalable.
Welcome to the Vacation Rental Show. This is your essential playbook to grow and scale your vacation rental business with advice and insights from the best in the biz. I'm your host, Lynell Gordon.
So welcome to the Vacation Rental Show. I'm Lynell Gordon, your host, and I am really thrilled, guys. You're going to love this. Merilee Karr, she is an entrepreneur and an industry leader in the short-term accommodation sector. Guys, she's projected by PricewaterhouseCoopers to reach $330 billion by 2025. She is the founder and CEO of Under the Doormat Group and the chairperson of the UK industry body. Now, guys, listen to this. Working closely with the government and as an industry spokesperson, including BBC, Sky News, The Guardian, Times, Huffington Post, and others, and a speaker at industry conferences, of course, in the UK and globally. So I am thrilled to have you. Welcome, Merilee.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here and wonderful to get to talk to some of your listeners about the industry.
I'm thrilled. So let's talk a little bit about you. Tell me, in today's episode, tell me what you would like to speak about, because when you said what you told me earlier, and this is exactly what the podcast is about. So I'm thrilled. You want to help property managers grow.
Well, I mean, look, Under the Doormat started out as a property manager ourselves. So I know what it takes to grow a business. But I also know what some of the challenges are and the things that make it really hard to grow in this industry. So I think it's a great topic to talk about because there are so many amazing entrepreneurs out there today trying to grow businesses in the sector. And the more that we can do to empower them and enable them to achieve the growth that they want to deliver, the stronger the industry will be and the stronger the businesses will be that operate within it. And that is ultimately for me the biggest goal.
So tell me this, what is the number one advice that you would give to property managers who want to grow?
I mean, look, I think the simplest thing is to think about the size you want to be, not today, but in 2 or 3 years' time. And build the systems, the processes, get the right technology in place so that you can actually be the size of company that you want to be. And I think one of the things that's really hard is we often as entrepreneurs are just stitching things together to make it work. And
especially at first.
I mean, we've all done it. I remember actually having to travel with suitcases in between properties and getting linens changed. And I mean, all kinds of stories. So, you've got to, in the early days, stitch things together to figure out what works. But then very quickly, you've got to understand how to find the right technology, how to systematize the processes in your business so that you end up having consistency and that you can train your team when you have new members joining. All the things that make things work like clockwork without just increasing everyone's workload and burning everyone out. So I think it's hard because when you're running at 100 miles an hour, it's also hard to change the tires. But that's basically the magician act that everyone's expected to do. And hopefully we can talk about some of the things that you can do that make that a little easier.
So what I hear from you is this. It is a lot of work, number one, especially to start. And you have to set goals. If you don't set your goals, you don't know where you're going. And one of the ways that I think is the best way to set goals is to sit down and make a list of what you want to do and where you want to be. And I think that without the goals, there's no measurement. You can't measure where you are. So talk to me about the way you start that.
Well, look, for us, we've always had a business plan. We've brought investors on board. So, that's critical. You're never going to raise investment if you don't have a plan. And we've been very lucky because, we started out as a property management company, but then very quickly built our own technology, Hosperia, which we built to be third-party technology from day one. So we sell that technology to other companies in the sector. But I guess in some ways, we've always looked at, okay, well, great. Where do we want to go with what we're doing today? But what are the bigger challenges that need solving? And how can we solve them, not just for ourselves, but how could we solve them for others in the industry as well? So the first one was, of course, for us, we said, well, look, we're going to try and get on with the technology that's already there, piece it together, stitch it together, make it work. And actually, my COO, Richard, coined a phrase, death by Chrome tab.
Tell me that again. Death
by Chrome tab. Because what ends up happening, I mean, you laugh, but it really resonates with people because you've got 10 different apps opened on your computer. You've got your PMS, you've got your pricing software, you've got an operational field software, you've got some kind of CRM. I mean, you've got 10 systems that don't always talk to each other very well. You're shuttling data in between them and it doesn't work. It's not scalable. And imagine you bring a new person into your team and you've got to train them on 10 systems. It takes them 3 months before they can do their job. So that was the problem we were trying to solve with Hosperia, because we're like, well, we operate and all these software companies out there that are building technologies, and they know how to build technologies, but they don't know how to operate. And so they don't know about the small nuances of what you build the technology to do that makes your life easier as an operator. And so that's why we built Hosperia, so that as an operator, you could have the commercial dashboard that you need. You have the operational scheduling. It auto schedules things like cleanings and linens and things like that based on the information the guests give you. And it also gives you all your financial information. So you can actually even see how your business is performing in the current month. You don't have to wait for the accountant 6 weeks later to give you a report. And so all of those things just help you run a business and help you grow without you having to manage 100 spreadsheets and 100 different systems to do it. So I just think those sorts of challenges, if we can make life easier for everyone in the industry and not just always have, the OTAs pushing the problems onto the property managers or the PMSs just saying, oh, well, sorry, that's somebody else's integration. Like, at the end, we need people that are actually going to help us make our lives easier rather than creating more complexity.
So here's the thing, and I don't know if you know this or not, but we put together a group of what we thought was best in class for Inhabit to solve that problem. The problem was the systems didn't talk to each other. There was double entry. There was data entry that was crazy, and you had to learn it. You had to learn it like you talk about. The thing about software and technology is that it's not the fact that it's expensive, which it is. The more expensive part is training your people. So just like you, Inhabit said, let's get the best in class. Let's make them talk to each other. Let's make them share the data. And that way you do have one system. And we actually put a lot of the systems into Streamline software to make that particular software an all-in-one. And I remember talking to Carlos about that issue when we first started. And I said to Carlos, you can't be a all-in-one solution without having all these different pieces. So here's the other thing that I find that I want to ask you about. Even with those, like you have a fabulous PMS, say the taking the money piece, that part where you're getting the money from the guest. You want the best in class for that because there's more functionality in that. And so what they did was they put everything in one, and you got to choose. We actually had a spreadsheet, and you could choose, I want this, I want this, I want this, based on the problems that you were having or based on the issues you're having. So I agree with you. That is like the best place to start is your technology and something that will allow your clients, your property managers to be able to manage it in a way that is easier. So that death, that's truth. That is so true. So I agree. The other thing, tell me what you think about this. The biggest issue, I think, in technology, when you get a good system, is that you don't use all of the bells and whistles that they have. Not that you don't need them, but the fact of the matter is that you don't learn them. You get it to a place that you can run your business and you can run it efficiently. But oh my gosh, they always call and they say, do you know how, do you know what software we can use to do this? And we're like, you've already got it. You've paid for it. So leaving money on the table by not using that is a big deal. So do you have someone in your business that will send out like notes or send out emails that say, hey, we've got this now?
Yeah, so we often do kind of like feature upgrades or feature updates. Here's how it works. Here's how a client is using it. We also have dedicated account managers so that they can track what the usage in the system is and can see, oh, well, hold on a second. There's this whole functionality that you're not using. And so what we try and do is actually look at how people are using the system and understand where the gaps in usage are, because that's a pretty good indicator that people might not even be aware that they're missing part of what the technology can do for their business.
And now we have this huge, huge elephant in the room that is exponentially growing, AI, that we are now putting in our softwares. And it's extraordinary to think about where we're going to be in a few years. Do you agree with that?
I couldn't agree more. I think, to be honest, it's the most exciting thing. And look, I can sometimes be a little bit skeptical of the next big wave. So, if you would have talked to me even a year ago, I would have said, yeah, AI is interesting, but, our business are all about being personal and offering that personal service. But leapfrog, and if you now have used AI in the last month or two, the gigantic leaps that AI has taken are incredible and blowing everyone's mind.
It blows my mind. I can't believe it.
No, it is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Extraordinary.
But then the key is understanding, well, what does this mean for me? Does this make me obsolete? What does this mean for the OTAs? The whole industry is going to change, but that can seem scary. And sometimes it's like, oh my God, well, then what do I do? And you don't know what to do at all. And I actually think there are a couple of simple things that you can do that ensure that you are well protected for the direction that AI is going. The first thing is that in an AI world, the assets are ultimately the most important thing. So everyone who's distributing is going to be disrupted because how things get distributed, how people find what they're looking for is going to change. But what isn't going to change is that people want to travel. People want to stay in amazing places. So if you have the contract with the owner, if you're exclusive and that supply is yours to manage, that is the number one moat that you can build around your business. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is coming back to technology, making sure that you have all the data sitting in one central place. And I think this is the danger with a lot of the tech stacks nowadays, is somebody has a PMS that just is a core, and then they've got a bunch of different systems all plugged in from a marketplace that the PMS has, but the data doesn't all flow back into the PMS. It sits out in all these different systems. And so then in an AI world, you don't have the data because you can't query everything in a single system. And so I think the more that you have that data and own that data, and you have a single source of truth for all of it, then you are the owner of that data. That means you can train your AI models. That means you can build the customer interactions that provide a quicker, seamless experience for your guests. That means you can own your own tone of voice. All the things that are going to matter, because, I used to believe that high-end consumers don't want AI, they want a person. But actually, I've now come to the conclusion that people want a quick answer, and they want it to be accurate, and they want it to be in the right tone of voice, reflecting the brand. And should they not get the answer they need or they want the ability to immediately escalate to a person. But as businesses, if 90% of the queries that people have can get answered by AI first, because you've got all that rich data in your system to be able to answer their questions quickly and seamlessly, then your people can spend real time on the 10% that actually need a person.
Right. The thing that I find, there's a couple of points that you made that are extraordinary, and I want to kind of expand upon them because I think it's really important. So you talk about assets with AI. So guys, you need to know that you can create individual marketing profiles for each property based on the guest profiles. Who's coming to this house? I find it very interesting that that you said we can put the data in, and we can put our data into AI, into one place. People are going to, number one, they're going to search AI. You're going to find that Google and AI are going to, they're going to fight each other. You're going to have Gemini, which is, going to be Microsoft's solution, Google's solution. You're going to have a lot of different solutions. And here's the thing I want everybody to think about, because you mentioned it. In your tech, data in one place. Here's the problem with having all these different data systems that you use to find out pricing. You go to find out, whatever you're looking for in pricing's a big one, but whatever you're looking for in your in these outside data products. Here's the thing you've got to know, guys. Listen, they don't use the same algorithm. I'm just saying, some algorithms pull data from, say, all the OTAs, and they put that there. You and I know as property managers that your price in your office is different from that price over that they're pulling from Airbnb. They're pulling from Booking.com. They're pulling from all these different Verbo, all these OTAs, and then they're going to average it. You're going to look at that and you're going to say, okay, it's here, let's average. The fact of the matter is, accurate data, they're all accurate data. They're just based on different things. When we first started doing a data product, my company did that. I was the first data company to create an algorithm in my market. But we pulled data from the property management system. So I knew, and we still have that. It's called insights. It's called data insights. We know how much they actually paid. We know how much the extras were. We know when they booked. So we have that booking window. We know it wasn't a maintenance block. when you go over and you look at other, and I'm not going to name them, other products, they look at Airbnb data. And if there's a booking, you don't know if the owner has taken that and it's a zero revenue. You don't know if the toilet overflowed and there was a 2-week window there. They just know it's rented and it's off the market. Okay. So the off the market part really makes a difference in your daily rate and your, all the other types of statistical analysis we look at. So with AI, being able to put your data in, you can upload your reports and you can add your actual data. And I encourage people to do that or to find a product that does it that way because it's more accurate. So the other thing that you said, the tone of voice. AI is an expert today, not yesterday, today, a tone of voice, an AI that you can put your tone of voice and your brand in. So these are so exciting, Merilee. They're like, I can't wait. And it truly is exponential growth. So tell me what other advice would you give to property managers that are looking to grow? And then I'm going to change our subject because I really want to talk about something that you do specifically. And you're unusual. Not unusual. You're extraordinary and you're unique. And let's talk about some of those things. But tell me your advice, other advice that you would give to property managers looking to grow.
I mean, look, I think the number one thing is coming back to what we started with, which is have that plan for growth, focus on the supply growth and those relationships, focus on the guest experience and doing what you do well, and then looking for technologies and partners who can help you do the stuff which doesn't really make an impact. I think in the future world, there's going to be so much technology, services, and other things that can help you do all of that stuff in between. So provide an amazing guest experience, provide a great service to your owners, and do that each and every day so that their loyalty to you and to your brand is strong. I think that is, at the end of the day, this stuff is simple, but it's easy to get caught up in the day to day and forget that those are the two most important things that you can do.
I love that. So let's talk about you for just a minute. You have built businesses while at the same time you're representing the industry publicly. So how do you balance the commercial growth with the responsibility that you have to a wider ecosystem? Does that make sense? Is that
Yeah, I mean, look, I chaired the industry association for 7 years. Having had two children in the past couple of years, I've got a 1 and a 3-year-old. So I had to hand that baton over to someone else. And thankfully, Graham Donahue, who is CEO of Forge Holiday Group and Sykes Cottages, who's absolutely an industry titan.
I love him.
He's taken over the chairmanship there. So I stay involved. I'm absolutely, hopefully, one of the best members of the association. But I think when you've done that for 7 years, that industry role doesn't change, even if I'm not formally the chairperson anymore. And I think, nowadays we work with governments in the Middle East. I was talking to the DMO for Singapore yesterday about how the regulation can evolve in Singapore. And I think for me, it's a really strong ethos and belief that if we can grow the industry and we can protect the ability to grow the industry, then every one of us is going to have a bigger slice of, we're going to have a slice of a bigger pie. And therefore, it is that sense that if we can make sure that the industry is professionalized, make sure that we have standards, make sure that regulators understand the value that our industry brings into, their jurisdiction. All those things are really important. But I think one of the things that I've learned over time as well is that this stuff has to be commercially enticing as well for property managers to get involved, because we're all busy. We all have, really, really intense day jobs. And whether that is paying membership to a BRMA or a STA or an EHHA, and, thinking, wow, that's money that's just out the door. Is that really money I need to spend? Or whether you spend your time. And often people do it when things are under threat.
Yeah.
And actually, I see it completely the other way around. If we can get ahead of things, we can actually spend less time firefighting and more time creating the commercial opportunities that we want to build. And so for me, the best example of that was the initiative that we led in the UK during COVID, which was Homes for NHS. We hosted about £20 million, so about $25 million worth of free stays for NHS workers over the pandemic. But that was, of course, a great charity initiative. I don't want to, everyone in the industry participated. It was a fantastic collaborative effort. But then we said, well, hold on a second. How can we sell into government? Because we don't want handouts from government. We actually want to be able to sell our product. And so we then went, and as an industry, and under the umbrella of Trusted Stays, we actually won the first ever government contract for our industry in the UK. So that was great because that solved one industry problem, which is government wasn't buying from us. And that was during the pandemic, a real disappointment when we offered something that they needed. But then the second thing that solved was that our industry had never had access to the global distribution system. So in America, that's normally Sabre. Globally, that's Travelport, Amadeus. But I mean, this is the system that powers airlines, hotels, and this entire ecosystem of travel agents. And yet none of those organizations can purchase stays in our industry. And so because we won that government contract, we were then able to build the first industry connection into the global distribution system. And when we did that as a global deal with Amadeus, and it is multi-GDS, so it can push inventory into all the GDSs. And actually, it was amazing because just last week, I was talking to the guys from Responsibly, and we are now starting to onboard the first buildings and inventory in the US into the global distribution system. But all that, but the thing is, to get on there and to be able to do this, you have to meet standards, duty of care. Corporates are not going to purchase stays in your properties unless you can demonstrate you meet the right standards. So what it means is that all of a sudden, getting accredited has a value because you can then sell into new markets. And I've always believed that people aren't going to get accredited just because it's the right thing to do. They're going to do it when there's a commercial value to achieving it.
That's because that's where the money is.
Well, but also you have to prioritize. Everyone's busy. So I also think, trying to hit people over the head and saying, oh, well, come on. I mean, you should do this because it's the right thing to do. It doesn't work because we're all swamped. So put that carrot in front and say you can access a new channel to market, new demand, counter-cyclical demand. All of a sudden, that's a far more interesting proposition. And getting accredited is something that is high on your list of priorities to be able to access that revenue. So I think that is just the best example of how collaboration together as an industry can open new markets and open new opportunities for everyone in it who's doing the right thing.
This episode of the Vacation Rental Show is sponsored by RevMax, the premier full-service revenue management system built for vacation rental managers who are looking for a market edge. RevMax offers data-driven tools and services that will increase revenue and drive more profit. Connect with their revenue management experts at getrevmax.com and discover their full-service revenue management solution. You'll be glad you did.
So I'm going to blow your mind. about 15 years ago, in conjunction with VRMA, VRMA didn't exist at the time. Maybe it'd been 18. I've been in the business a long time. I have. We saw this coming down the road, and I was actually at the table, and we were meeting with these large, I don't remember if it was Sabre. It was Sabre that we met with around the table. And here's the interesting thing so we met as a company. We had put a proposition together saying we need a global distribution system and we need to own it. Okay. The property managers need to own it. And instead of like a Verbo. And what happened was, it was very interesting. We met with them for a few days in Austin, Texas, I think is where we were. And sitting at the table, the president of the VRMA at that time did not have the same vision. And I don't understand why. Well, actually, I do. It's because the president at the time of VRMA was in a market that didn't need any help. You have to understand at that time, all along the East Coast, all the way from Virginia, all the way down to parts of Florida, you had no problem with inventory, no problem selling the inventory because you had the same people that came, and we still do in areas, the same people that came every year, the same date. They booked a year in advance so they could have the week they wanted. They didn't need a distribution system, but we saw the need because my company worked all over the U.S. and we saw that need and we saw the change, that there was going to be a change. And what happened at the end, and I tell this story to John Suzuki was a part of what became VRBO, what became Expedia, or what was Expedia at the time, I think. And we were going to work with, that. And what happened was we were competing basically against Expedia, doing or Verbo, I don't remember which one at the time, doing a system that belonged to VRMA. It was a co-op, nonprofit. And do you know, they passed up that. They chose Sabre because this is a much bigger, much bigger. They're much more developed. They were. But I turned at the end of that, when they voted against it, I turned to the guy next to me, which happened to be, and hang on just a minute, let me edit this. I just meant John Suzuki. I turned to John Suzuki, or maybe John Banzecca was next to me. I don't remember which one. And I said, congratulations, you're going to make a lot of money in the next 10 years. And that was, it's not that the people or the vendors in this, in our business are not, in our industry are not smart and they don't foresee things. It's that there are very large corporate kind of things now that do it very well. So why would you reinvent the wheel? Let me ask you this. What is the one misconception about short-term accommodations that you've spent the most time correcting or informing, educating policymakers or the media where they just don't understand and you're like, oh, no, here it is. What is that one thing?
I think it is the value that our sector brings to local businesses, to property owners. I think there's this perception that there's just some like get rich quick people out there in our sector. And it takes away housing and it creates community issues and all these types of things. I mean, we've all heard these narratives.
We've seen it in Hawaii where they completely took it away.
Exactly. And I think for me, I always start when I'm talking to politicians by saying, look, our goal as an industry is to grow responsibly. It's not about taking away homes from people who need to live there. It's about making sure that homes that would otherwise sit empty, a vacation home that would just be used 2 weeks a year, that those homes get used and they generate wealth for the owner, but they also generate wealth for that community. There's been some great research in the UK about the fact that an empty home versus a home which is rented for vacation rental or short-term rentals, that home that's rented has 6 times more value in terms of spend in the local community. That is at the supermarket, in local shops, in local restaurants, in local attractions and amenities. And so, that also generates tax dollars. And I think politicians forget that people coming and visiting and staying in these accommodations are actually paying taxes, which allow them to provide all the services that they want to be providing to their communities. So that for me is the biggest misconception. And it's a real disappointment because we've got great data on the value that the sector brings. Visit Britain actually just released a study yesterday, which talks about the GDP value that tourism brings and the value that it brings to communities around the entire country. And the short-term rental industry across Europe, at least, represents now 20% of accommodation nights.
Wow. I didn't realize that number was so high. Let me ask you something. For my listeners who maybe they're dealing with an HOA, maybe they're dealing with local community, maybe they're dealing with local government, would you be willing to communicate with them and maybe give them talking points for things that you have found to be effective in winning that argument? Because I agree, that's one of the biggest stopgaps. Ginger Harrelson has been working on that in Alabama, and she has won. She's also an attorney, property manager, attorney, brilliant, drop dead gorgeous, and she is a well-spoken person. She has been successful at that. Scott Leggett is another person. Oh, I adore him. He's he's one of my mentors. And he is fabulous. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask you because you and he are like speaking the same language. He's like, be proactive, don't wait, be proactive. And I think that we get caught up in the running of our business, our property management business, because there's so much to do. That we are working in the business and not on the business. Working on the business means taking these local steps to make sure that, number one, you're taken care of there. And Scott Leggett has created, a nonprofit to help that and lots of resources. So I think that, and he works in Europe as well. All over the world. He's literally all over the world working on that. I've sent out and I'm like, I want to interview and find out what's happening. So between you, Merilee, and Scott, I think we're going to have a lot of good information for property managers to help them to address this issue in their community. Let me ask you this. So I know we spoke.
One thing I would say, sorry, just on that one, the other organization in North America that's done loads, and I don't know if you've interviewed Dave Prowse.
I haven't.
The guys at Rent Responsibly have actually created all the toolkits and all the things to support people to do this in every local association. And that is their ethos.
I have, actually. You're right. I 100% have. Went right over my head. I have interviewed him, and you're right. That's a fabulous resource for people.
No, absolutely amazing. And the stuff that they're doing and building over time, just blows out of the water, to be honest. Anything that I can do to provide, because I don't have a toolkit, I can give people a bit of advice and those sorts of things, but they're actually making it repeatable and scalable.
Yes.
So that property managers around the entire country have the things they need to be able to do that in their local communities. And that, to be fair, is where, the US is very different than Europe, because European regulations tend to be national, or at least at a major city level, whereas in the US, it can literally be down to a little micro, HOA, as you were saying.
Absolutely.
And so that makes it a lot harder.
I think about 7 or 8 years ago, I had a HOA call me, and I have such a desire to help people. That's who I am inside. And they called me. And they said, Lynell, they're trying to take this away. And it was a little community in Florida. Nope. No. It was up north, actually. And we actually wrote some things out for them to help them. And they were able to keep their property, their rentals in that area. But it was such a big deal because there was nobody to help at the time. So you guys have lots of resources, property managers.
And that is one area that I think is which is really helpful. I'm happy to share the materials we've done because we've actually worked with some of the city councils and with buildings across the UK. And we call it our building policies. I mean, whether it's building or HOA is kind of not the point, but actually, because a lot of times what they do is they're like, let's just write this out and ban it. That's their starting point. And our view is, well, if you can actually allow it, it doesn't go underground and people don't try and hide it. But then you have to put some real clear rules around health and safety and making sure that you know who's going to be staying. And so we've got that kind of checklist that we give to buildings and homeowner associations here in the UK to say hey, here's a balanced policy that will give you visibility and control and allow you to do this. I think one of the other things, because having had that experience, we're working with governments in the Middle East mainly, but also our technology was built so that you could actually allow a layer of visibility. So you could, for example, even adopt a technology solution within a particular development so that the development gets the visibility they want. The owners can rent it out and it distributes out, of course, into all the OTAs. So we are trying to use some of the technology solutions that we've built to actually help us unlock these kind of, naysayers, the people who don't want our industry and they use as an excuse lack of transparency and control and all those types of things. And we're like, well, what if we just give you all of that? What if you have that visibility and we can do that with the technology that already exists?
Yes.
So happy to have that conversation with anyone because, if we can just go back and say, the answer isn't just to ban it, here's a different answer, and here's a plug and play solution that you can implement. All of a sudden they're like, oh, wow, you've just taken away all my arguments.
And you've taken away all their work to make this happen.
Yeah.
Which is huge. And the AI products that are out there, I love too. I know this is probably a question that we'll revisit things we've already talked about, but I want to ask it anyway. So what lessons from traditional hospitality, short-term rental operators still underestimate, and what does short-term rentals do better? What do we do better today than hotels? Because that's a great talking point for us.
I mean, look, I was speaking on another webinar recently about the hotelization of short-term rentals.
Truth. That's there too.
I think we all know that, when companies get too big, when things lose their authenticity, that you can run the same risk that actually the hotel industry faced. And part of the reason why our industry is so attractive is that you lose any uniqueness. And everything becomes standardized. I often talk because I think it's really important that we professionalize. And I don't think professionalizing has to mean that everything becomes standardized. I like to use the phrase standards, not standardization. Because we want a high bar for standards. But you still want that creativity, that uniquely designed property. You want that experience of what a local community can offer when you go and stay there. So I think it's really important that we professionalize. And I think there is a lot we can learn from the hotel industry about standards and professionalization. But I think being able to achieve that while still maintaining that personality, that uniqueness, and that kind of authentic flavor that our industry brings is what actually the real value of our sector provides, and why customers continue to choose our industry.
I have a perfect example for that. Steve Schwab, who I'm sure everyone knows in this industry, when Vacasa and Casago, when he merged with them, one of the first things, I think one of the first things, he may have done a bunch of things before, but one of the things that caught my attention, and I was like all hearts for him. I'm just saying, he started a local campaign, localization, rather than what you're talking about, corporate large companies being able to make them local, and go back to that love of local is a huge push in our industry. We also have, let me think of the company. Hang on. You think I would know because I'm a part of it. Hang on just a second. Let's edit that out because I don't think you know. You may not know, and I want everyone here to know. We actually interviewed him interviewed the people involved here. And let me look for the name of it, because we changed the name after we started. Oh, it's called Stakeholders, Stakeholders Vacation Rental Group. They create these super groups of property managers they're putting together for people that want to sell their property management company. Okay. And it's so great. So guys, if there's anybody out there that wants to sell your property management company, this is fabulous. Please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about it. But what this is super local. So they're taking all these property management companies that manage their companies well. And that's one of the big qualifications. And EBITDA is the qualification. And they're putting these local companies together, and they are selling them as a whole to P&E, private equity. And the stipulation is, from the top down, the stipulation for choosing which company gets to take this, and they're a lot interested, let me tell you, because there is a lot of money in this. The stipulation is leave them alone. Leave them alone. Let them do their job uniquely. Don't try to create, we're not trying to create this. And I think we're putting together like 30, 35 companies at a time. And the people that run those companies very well, we look at them and we're like, okay, who's the C-suite going to be looking at this? They're going to be the property managers, or someone from the industry that they bring in to take care of that. And Brady Stump and Lino, they've done an amazing job of keeping that super local, but giving them like resources, like like human resources, or, the financial piece of it that you have to run, and getting a system for that so that can be taken off the table. And it is a fabulous idea. So I agree 100% with you. I think that, looking at it from that level, it just makes sense, because these people that are in this group make more money. If you were to think about this, if you were to sell your property management company, and you're a great local company, you could sell it at an X. Putting it together as a group, you sell it at a much higher rate. And you have to keep a certain percentage in, and you have to run it for at least 2 or 3 years. I don't remember what they're saying, because we want that to be successful. And then you could create an exit plan if you wanted to go out. But I was just like, my heart was just like so thrilled to be a part of that. When Brady asked me, because I was like, this is something I can really sink my teeth in. Things like putting together Casago and Vacasa and creating that there. Steve Schwab has had an enormous mountain to climb. I think he's doing a great job at it, but I 100% agree with what you're saying. And that's a perfect example of what we're doing there. Let me ask you this. As an entrepreneur, what has been your most defining defining points in your journey so far?
Well, look, I think all of us surviving COVID was one of those big challenges, but let's be a bit more creative than that.
That's true.
I think actually for me, one of the defining moments was 2 years ago when we merged with Vive. So Vive was one of our big competitors in the market for many years, a brand that I had huge respect for. Of course, I knew the founders and had huge respect for them and what they built. And so I think for us, that not only made us a bigger and more well-established company after the combination, it brought together, what we call B2C, so the individual owners, all of a sudden we were also across Europe in Paris as well. But what it also did was bring together the technology in Hosperia, the platform in Trusted Stays in the corporate market, together with a brand and more scale. And I think that has really made a massive difference in terms of what we're now doing in working with institutional real estate and helping them start to see the real value that short-term rentals can play within large real estate portfolios. So I sort of think, wow, I mean, that was only 2 years ago. It also, in some ways, feels like it could have been 5. But I look back at that and I think that was a real pivotal moment for us. And anytime, anyone who's been through mergers, it's not easy. But when you come out the other side, and, you've got a stronger group of businesses in this case, that mean we can be talking to and working with really large institutions. I think that's just really exciting in terms of what that means for where we can play in the years ahead.
I want to offer you a huge kudo for that, because I know how difficult that is. When my company created the Insights product, we looked to merge at the bequest of some people in the industry who are really pushing, you need to merge this product together. And we tried, we actually met, and the terms were so bad that there was no way that it was a serious offer to us. And I was not in a place where I could bend enough to kill that product that we'd made, and looking back, 2020 vision, it's a good thing I didn't merge, but it's so difficult. So I applaud you for that. Merging with other companies that are doing similar things, and I have the highest respect for that company. Don't get me wrong. I'm thrilled. And they went on to be incredibly successful in the business. And they're still a great company. But I think God was looking out for me, because I eventually did a merger with a much larger company that turned out to be very good for my property managers in my portfolio, that were my peeps that I loved, along with, a lot of other people. So, I know how hard that is. So I'm so thrilled for you that you were able to do that. And you're right. That is a defining point in your business for sure. What advice would you give to founders or leaders trying to build their company in a value-led businesses? Because it certainly is our industry is so scrutinized right now. It really is, especially governmentally and institutionally. So what advice would you give to them trying to build that business in this environment?
I mean, I think in the current environment, the key is to really understand what is your USP, what is your differentiation, and not trying to do everything yourself. So is having relationships with all the owners and building up the supply, is that your thing? Is direct bookings your thing? Or actually, is it better to work with and leverage the power of the OTAs in distribution? And then what layers of systems and technology and services do you need to support you? And increasingly, how are you going to use AI to do things efficiently? So I think it is really just understanding, your offer to the guests, your offer to your owners, and how you can really focus your energy on scaling supply and demand, because there's always two sets of customers, your owners and your guests. And if you can focus and really grow those two things, then the business itself is going to thrive. So I think that comes back a little bit to what we were saying earlier. It's like, keep the focus on the simplicity, because otherwise you can get completely caught up in complexity. And sometimes that means you take the eye off the ball of what's really important. So focus on what's really important, focus on your owners, focus on your guests, partner, and bring in the expertise you need on other things. And I think there is always and will always be a demand for what we offer to owners and guests as this industry continues to grow.
100% agree. I have one thing I want to reiterate that you say, because I think it's so important. Notice that Merilee did not say, you have to do OTAs, you have to do, you have to concentrate on OTAs, you have to concentrate on direct. No, she said, which part of that, is most important? Where are you going? There are markets, guys, that don't use OTAs. I know that is hard to comprehend. But yesterday, I was interviewing someone who has a fabulous product that interfaces with OTAs. And I was thinking, and he was like, I'm happy to beta this in your market, Lynell, where I have property, where I have rentals. And I thought to myself, we don't use OTAs. And I don't know how to tell you that is like people, there are people that come on here that are like, their whole business is built around OTAs. That's fabulous. One of my best friends in Myrtle Beach, her whole business is built around OTAs, and she makes a lot of money and she loves it, and her people are happy and she's happy. But then I go back down towards other places close to, they're like within 30 miles. And no one uses OTAs. The only time they use OTAs is when the property owner insists, because they think they're losing rentals. So one of the things that I'm going to beta and try to do is, I thought I'm going to talk to my sister, runs Hobbs Realty. She is the owner and manager. Her husband's founder, and of the property management company that manages my rental. And I was like, you know what? I should look at this, because I don't want to close my eyes to the OTAs, even though we haven't had to use them, guys. What if they really can do off-season rentals? What if they haven't been able to in the past, but there's a lot of technology out there, like you said earlier, that didn't exist before, and a lot of AI that didn't exist before. What if they actually can do that? Let's see. So I usually offer to beta products for my sister, and we'll see. So, but I think that point is important, because direct bookings are very important in our industry. A lot of people want to reduce the amount of money they spend on OTAs by doing direct bookings. And that's a great business model. But it doesn't work for everyone. I want to ask you this. Tell me your favorite homeowner or guest story from your property management company.
Well, actually, a really funny one which comes to mind, which is a bit about owner and guest, was that we have a property in central London, beautiful Muse apartment, and it was early days. I had to cycle in the morning early to do a checkout of the guest. And I thought, oh, this is going to be really quick. He's going to want to hand the keys and get off to the airport or whatever. And he said to me, no, you have to sit down and have breakfast with me. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. I'm like, okay, let's see what this guy wants. So we sat down. And he then proceeded to tell me, he's like, look, I'm not, one of these people who has, lots of supernatural experiences. He's like, and I haven't had one for 10 years. And he's like, but I saw a ghost in this house. And I was like, really? he's like, yeah, I was lying on the bed and I sat up, and he's like, there was a mother and child playing at the end of the bed. And he's like, who lives in this house? What's the story? And I was like, well, to be honest, it's an older lady. She doesn't have any children. So, I mean, I can't, I can't speak to what that might have been. But he was like, actually, he's like, it was a really nice experience, a warm experience. They were happy, but he's like, just was really curious about the house and the story because he'd had that experience. So obviously that brings a little bit together, the owner and the property and the history together with the guest who'd had this experience. So that was a very unusual way to spend a Tuesday morning at like 7 a.m. But always one of those really nice stories that I remember. So that's one I thought worth telling.
This is interesting. I had someone else that had a similar story about a ghost in a house, as when I asked them, and here's what they did. They literally marketed that house as a house. I don't want to say a haunted house because I don't remember. They marketed it in a positive way. No, we've been told there's a ghost here. And listen, people rented that house like crazy. It was like a marketing genius, but it came from the story of the guest coming in and talking to the property manager about it. And it was a positive experience for them too. So who am I to poo-poo what happens in the world? I don't know everything, that happens in the supernatural. I know lots of things that God has done for me, but who am I to say that didn't happen and doesn't exist? And they were I know they believed that. And I'm sure the guy sitting down to breakfast with you believed that. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with property managers?
Oh, look, to be honest, I think we've covered loads. And, I think the main thing I would say is if any of this resonates, if there's anything I've said that people want to follow up with, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or whatever means. And I'm always happy to have a conversation.
Okay, guys, if you're going to reach out to her on LinkedIn, you can go to Under the Doormat or look at Merilee. It's Merilee, and her last name is Karr, and it's Karr. So you should be able to find her on LinkedIn. And I would love for people to reach out to you, especially people that are trying to be proactive in government affairs, because you have such great experience at that, and you're at a level that you know how to deal with people. So please, guys, reach out to her if you have any questions about being proactive. And don't forget, if you want to sell your property or be a part of this super group thing that's happening, contact me. I am happy to do that because I'm a real estate agent myself, believe it or not. I have a real estate degree. I mean, I'm not a degree. I have a real estate license, a broker's license that I practice in North Carolina, and I still practice in North Carolina. It's one of my favorite things in this world is to do real estate. And so I keep my license up to date, and I do some rentals, and I do some other things, but I am happy to help you, put you in touch with people too. So if you know of anybody, and we're doing it worldwide, Merilee. So if you know anybody that really is at that place and they've been in their business for a long time and they're like, I need an exit plan, because the cool thing about this product is that it pays you not just once, but twice. You get paid the first time. You're putting, like 80% equity in, and you're keeping 20%. And that 20% we're looking to grow at a enormous X. So it's not just that you would get paid out once, you would get paid out multiple times. And that's what, and I've seen that happen in a business model. Personally, I've invested in that business model. And so I know that it works. So I'm excited to see how this goes. I'll know more in about 2 months that when we close our first closing. But the people involved are wonderful. So I hope that people will reach out to Merilee, and they'll be able to get resources that will help them. I'm going to call a couple of friends and that are struggling right now with that, and that are really looking to make a difference in their community and in their state. state level. And I think you're the right person to reach out for that. So also, guys, if you have prop tech questions, she is an expert in that. And she's very famous in that industry. She really is. So I am so honored to be able to interview you and talk to you. So thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
This episode of the Vacation Rental Show is brought to you by RevMax. To find out more about how RevMax can help grow your vacation rental business, visit getrevmax.com. Make sure to search for the Vacation Rental Show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at Inhabit, thanks for listening.